In this Android tutorial, we're going to be adding the Android Marshmallow permission support to the camera2 API tutorial series. I think that will be part 15. Welcome to Mobile Application Tutorials. My name's Nigel. So in this tutorial we're going to add our Android Marshmallow permission support to the camera2 API tutorial series. Let's make a start. Okay, the first thing I need to do is just to adjust the versioning files, the versioning in the Gradle configuration file. This is a reference. Here's my website, nijadtuts.com. So I'm just going to make some changes to here, and I need to add this dependency so we can get the app config library. So here's my project. So first thing I'm going to do is just to adjust our versioning up to 23. So that will have to be changed. So will that. I'm going to keep the minimum SDK version so I can use older versions of Android. Target will change as well. Okay, and now all we need to do is add our app compat dependency down here. Now save that, and we're going to have to resync it now. Okay, sync's now completed. Now let's go into our source file. Mine's camera intent activity. Okay, so the first thing I want to do here is to add a couple of request IDs, and let's find a good location. I believe this is an old request ID, so I'll just add them down here. And it'll be an int, and I think the first these request IDs are the requests we make for the permissions themselves. So I'll call one, let's call one request, let's say external storage. Let's be a bit more precise, let's say write storage. So we can write to storage. Let's give this a unique value of 1. And now instead of another request, and this will be a request camera. Let me put result on the end of that name just to give a bit more context. Change that to 2, and let's just go back here and put result here as well, because it's the result of the permission requests is what these two identifications mean. Okay, that's now been done. Right, now I can actually, since I've upgraded my versioning, I can actually see a red horizontal bar to indicate an error. Let's go to that. So I'll press F2. Okay, so it's saying the camera manager, I want to make a call to open up the camera, and already we're getting a permission rejected error here. So it's telling us that we need to do a check permission call. So for me, this is probably a good place to set up our permission request just for when we want to open up the camera, because it's indicated there's an error there already. Okay, so let's start setting up the code for a permission request for the camera services. First thing I want to do is I'm going to just check the build versioning. So I just want to check to see, I only need permission requests if it's higher than 23. Version codes, M for Marshmallow. Okay, so once we're in there, now we do our check permission. This is where we use our ContextCompat. So we check for self permissions. So we check to see if the permission's been granted. And this will take the context and the permission itself is going to be for the camera as such. Now we're just doing to check to see if permission's been granted. So permission's been granted, that's fine. We can then open up the camera as such. And for some reason, if the permission has been denied, let's put toast just to indicate that you've denied permission and what will happen for that. So let's check to see if we have denied the permission. Okay, so the method we want to call is shouldShowRequestPermissionRationale. And again, we add the permission here. And it's camera. So if the permission's been denied, let's put a toast just to indicate what's happened. Just to let the user know why we can't run the camera application. Let's say no permission to use the camera services. Something to that style there. And let's complete the toast length of time and show the toast. So this will only get called if the user of the application has previously denied permission to use the camera services. And because this is a camera application and the user doesn't grant permission to use the camera, makes the camera pretty redundant. Okay, now down here we do the request permissions. Set up a new string. And inside here we'll put the permission, camera. And the next that line down here will be the request camera result ID for when we make our request. Okay, now let's just complete this for tidiness to support Android operating systems, Android versions older than Marshmallow. An else here and delete this line here and paste it in there as such. Okay, so that's now the request completed to use our camera. We do have two other permissions we need for this application. One is we need a read storage permission so we can show the gallery. If we don't have that, we can't read in the images for our little gallery. We also need the write storage permission to actually save the images to SD card to external storage. But I'm only going to set up the write to external storage because by default that gives me read permissions as well. So only set up one permission. I don't want to bombard the users with 3 permissions to be granted when all I really need is 2. Okay, so the next step down here is let's set up our request permission result callback. Let's see if I can remember this name. It's onRequestPermissionsResult. It's going to take 3 arguments to this method. The first one is going to be our request code. The second one is going to be an array of strings, which is going to be stand for the permissions. And the final method will be the results, whether they've been granted or not. So this is called grant results, whether or not the permissions have been granted or not. Okay, now we're going to be supporting 2 request codes for the camera2 API application. So I'm just going to use a switch here just as a way of working out which request has been requested. So in here I'll put the request code. And the first case is the case just up here which represents the request camera result. Get rid of that colon, it should go at the end there. And let's put a break there, just in case I forget it. Okay, so first thing we want to do, we want to check to see if permission's been granted. So let's check the grant results in the first item in that array. Basically for this, the camera permissions have to be granted for this application. So what I want to check to see if the results haven't been granted and put our toast up just to say what's happened to the user. So let's just say has not been granted, and package manager permission not granted. So inside here we can put our toast. I text this and let's put the message in there. Cannot run application because camera service permissions have not been granted. Something to that effect. The length of time for the toast, and show the toast as such. Okay, so that's fine for that. Basically, when we run this, if we haven't granted permission, we're going to get this toast showing all the time with a pop-up box coming back. Please give me permissions to use the camera services for the camera application. Okay, just let me set up a default here. And inside this default, we'll call the super constructor for this method. And request, and it just takes request code. It should have just gone to permissions and grant results as such. Okay, we've now supported up the permission request for camera. Now let's do the write storage request, so we can use both the gallery that comes with that camera application and we can save images to external storage. Okay, so I'm gonna go into the onCreate method. Now I'm just going to go down here. Basically, when we create our image adapter here, we're calling a method called sort files to latest, and basically we're doing a read on a number of files. That operation needs read external storage permission, so I need to add a permission there. But because I don't want to add two permissions, read and write, I'm just going to actually request the write permission, which will not only support the reading, but it will support the writing for saving images as well. So we'll set it up here, our permission request. And the first part will be similar to what we did for the camera services, where we check to see the versioning. So we want to check if the SDK version is bigger than or equal to Android Marshmallow. And now we do a check on the permission request. Check self permissions. This for the context, and the permission itself is in this case going to be write external storage. So let's just check to see if that's been granted. So if that has been granted, let's go down here, we can paste these two lines here as such. And basically we can start loading images for our gallery. If it hasn't, And basically we need to call shouldShowRequestPermissionRationale. Only gets called if permissions originally denied permission for this write external storage. So let's provide a toast saying why we need this. This. And so let's just say we need write to start the gallery and save images. That's for two things we need it for. Now set up the length of time and show that toast. So only need it if permission's been denied previously. Okay, now we can request our permissions. There'll be a new string we're setting up. And that permission in this case is going to be write external storage access. And we also need to pass along our request ID, which will be request write storage here as such. So that's the request part of it done. Now we just need to tidy up this code to support versions not older than Marshmallow. And it's just moving these two lines into here as such. Okay, that's now done. Now we need to support the result of our permission request. So we need to go back to onRequestPermissionsResult here and add a case to support our write external storage. Request write external storage results. And do a check here to see if we've been given permissions for this. And that's just to check to see if permission's been granted. And now just let me put a break in here before I forget to do it. And now we can just paste it in our code for this to load, to create the adapter. We'll get that code back from the onCreate. So we want to paste in these two lines. Paste them here. And let's just finally add, if we haven't been granted permission, we need to put a toast up explaining what's happened. Let's just say don't have permission to start the gallery or save images. Something to that effect. Set up the length of time for toast, make that short and show the toast. Okay, that should be it. So there's been a little bit of work setting up the permissions for the camera2 API, but that camera2 API does, in theory, require 3 sets of permissions. Okay, just spotted a slight bug here. We need to fix that before we run the application. So on this line here, we need to check to see if the version is bigger or equal to Marshmallow, because Marshmallow supports the runtime versions as such. And now I'm just going to make a slight change in the focusing part of the application. It just means I will capture an image straight away whether or not it's been focused. So this makes it easier for the purposes of the tutorial. So it's the camera, let me do a search down here. It's camera capture callback. And basically here we get focus locked. Focus has been successful, but let me just add a call if we get the lock but it hasn't focused. Just so I can ensure I'm going to capture an image. So basically this line here, we get the focus lock, we can capture an image, but not focus as it says here. But this will aid me in my tutorial just to capture an image, or else I might take several times trying to get that focus. Okay, now let's run the application and see what happens. And the application now started. Let me record that so you can see what's happening. Okay, already we're being asked for permissions. It's basically asking us, we need to use the camera services or nothing can happen. So we need to grant that permission. So allow that. Now part of this application is, when it starts up, it loads the image gallery, horizontal recycle view image gallery at the top. So we're asking for permission for the read permission, but I'm also asking for write permission later on to save the images. So I don't want to bombard the users with 3 permissions when I can just use 2. So let's allow that as well. So the application's now started running, and we see it's got the recycle view image gallery showing at the top. If we'd denied that permission, we wouldn't see that gallery, and we wouldn't be able to save images either because I haven't put the code in the application for that. Anyway, let's take a photo. And the photo's now successfully captured and shown up in the image gallery. Okay, so that's it to setting up the Marshmallow runtime permissions for the camera2 API application. As you can see, a bit more work involved if you require more than 1 permission. So in this case, we required several permissions. We required camera services permissions to use the actual camera hardware. We required permissions to read from the file system to view the images for the image gallery. We also required permissions to save the captured image to external memory. We managed to use the right external storage permission for both the viewing the gallery and saving the images, just to remove one extra dialogue, because too many dialogues right starting up the application could frustrate the user as well. So that needs to be taken into context as well. So that concludes this part of the tutorial. If you made it this far, thank you for watching. And if you haven't already and you want to be notified of my tutorials, click that subscribe button. Those of you who have subscribed and like my tutorials, you can give me a thumbs up if you want, or a thumbs down. And explain to me what you don't like about my tutorials so I can fix them and make them better for you. And surrounding me, if you've got a PC, is all my social media accounts, so you can be notified of any updates or changes or new videos I've made. We've got the Twitter, Facebook, Pinterest and Google+, so you're welcome to follow me on any of those. And probably most importantly, just directly above me is a link to my website. So that contains the website posting to this tutorial will be in an article form where you can see the code changes, instructions on GitHub, as well as the video itself. Anyway, that's all for this one. Bye for now.